Welcome again. This time we're looking at Psalm 39. And again, it is a Psalm of David. And it's quite a short psalm. There are just 13 verses in it. So it divides into 4 parts, 3 parts of 3 verses each. And the last part has 4 verses. And the first part, verses 1 to 3, David has something to say about silence and keeping silent. So that will be interesting. Then the second part, verses 4 to 6, he's going to talk about the brevity of life and how it appealed to David, and we can learn much from that. Then verses 7 to 9, the third part, he's going to speak of hope, for the believer has a hope that the unbeliever does not have. And finally, verses 10 to 13, he makes a prayer to God to spare him, and he wants to be as useful as he can to God until his last day on earth. So we're going to look at the psalm. I read the first 3 verses. I said, I will take heed to my ways, that I sin not with my tongue. I will keep my mouth with a bridle while the wicked is before me. I was dumb with silence. I held my peace even from good, and my sorrow was stirred. My heart was hot within me. While I was musing, the fire burned. Then spake I with my tongue. So David had decided that these ungodly men, as they made their accusations, often false accusations, and he had decided that he wouldn't answer them. And he said, I will take heed to my ways, that I sin not with my tongue. It's very easy to sin with your tongue and to say something in the heat of the moment which is quite wrong, which was hurtful, which was just a half-truth, maybe even totally dishonest. And in the heat of an exchange with other people, perhaps with raised voices, it's very easy to sin with your tongue. You don't want to get into a raised voice argument at home or in work, and certainly not in church life or assembly life, to have raised voices arguing in a meeting is a very sad thing indeed. Now he said, he didn't want to sin with his tongue. I will keep my mouth with a bridle while the wicked is before me. And it is a good thing to remember this. Don't be talking about other Christians in the company of the ungodly. They will note it, and you could be destroying someone's reputation, someone's testimony easily by what you say. The tongue is a very powerful weapon, and it can be very destructive if used in a wrong way. He said, I was dumb with silence. I held my peace even from good. But he found this very difficult to keep quiet. When things were being said to keep quiet, he said, and my sorrow was stirred. He wanted to tell the truth. He wanted to say something. My heart was hot within me. There was something burning within him. He said, while I was musing, the fire burned. Then spake I with my tongue. And we trust that he did it advisedly and with wisdom. But there is a time to speak, certainly, and there is a time to be silent. Now, having given his experience on silence and how difficult it was to remain silent, he now speaks about the brevity of life And this is what he says: Lord, make me to know mine end, and the measure of my days what it is, that I may know how frail I am. Make me to know mine end. It's a good thing to think sometimes about the end of your life and how your life will end and how you would like it to end, and to think upon the day of your death. Now, it would be an unhealthy thing to be thinking about your death all the time. That would be unhealthy. That wouldn't be good for anyone. But equally, it would be very foolish never to think about the day of your death. It's something that we should bear in mind, that our life is, it has a limit, and it is determined that we will live so many years, or so many weeks, or so many days ahead. We do not know when our life will end. And so it's absolutely vital that we do the things that are important while we have time. So he says, Lord, make me to know mine end, and the measure of my days what it is, that I may know how frail I am. Behold, thou hast made my days as an handbreadth. So life is very short in comparison to eternity. I often think that at a funeral, or when a friend dies and you think of 70 years, even 80 years, but the point is they'll never be back. They'll never be back to revisit any of their choices, to withdraw any of the things they said, or to do anything about unforgiven sin. It's too late. So he says, Behold, thou hast made my days an handbreadth, mine age is nothing before thee. And there's all eternity out there. So live for eternity, because life is very short. And mine age is nothing before thee. Verily, every man at his best state is altogether vanity. Excuse me. And he says, Selah. So it's worth thinking about how long we have left and what we want to do with our lives. Surely every man walketh in a vain show. Surely they are disquieted in vain. He heapeth up riches, and knoweth not who shall gather them. You see, that's the way the majority of men live. Many of them will live to make money, and they do not even know often who will end up with the things they've been living their lives for. And now, just that reflection on the brevity of life, he leaves it and he goes to the subject which is most important to him, and that is the Lord himself. So in verse 7, And now, Lord, what wait I for? My hope is in thee. Isn't that lovely? There's a man, David had his priorities right. Do we have our priorities right? Do you? Do I? Is my hope in the Lord? And do I want to spend every waking minute in fellowship with him, in service, in enjoying him, in working for him, in knowing him, in loving him, in pleasing him? It's a wonderful thing to have a personal relationship with Christ, the Son of God. Now he says, Deliver me from all my transgressions. Make me not the reproach of the foolish. And he realizes that the way he could easily mess up his life is with his own transgressions. He could spoil himself and make himself unusable, that God couldn't use him. So he says, Deliver me from all my transgressions. That was important to David. It should be important to us, that there's no unjudged sin in our lives. Make me not the reproach of the foolish. We don't want to fall in sin. I was dumb, I opened not my mouth, because thou didst it. Now here is something that it's a hard truth, that very often the trial that we're going through is the result of our own transgression and our own sin. If you haven't worked at your marriage, or if you haven't been faithful, don't be surprised if your marriage gets into trouble and you realize it's too late. I should have been working at this long ago. Also, if I'm going to drink a lot, if a man drinks a bottle of vodka every day and he ends up ill with sclerosis of the liver, who has he to blame but himself? And I do not know what David's particular transgression was, but he says, because thou did it, he realizes that he's suffering the consequences of his own sin. But the Lord loves whom he chasteneth. So when the Lord allows you to go through a trial because of something, learn from it. Now he says, and moving into the last part, verse 10, remove thy stroke away from me. I am consumed by the blow of thine hand. Oh, he wants the Lord to have mercy on him. We all do that when we make mistakes, don't we? When thou with rebukes dost correct man for his iniquity, thou makest his beauty to consume away like a moth. A person can mess their life up so easily. Surely every man is vanity. Selah, think about that. So we need to think about our days and about our hope and about our transgressions. Now he prays, and he says to God in verse 12, hear my prayer, O Lord, and give ear unto my cry. Hold not thy peace at my fears, for I am a stranger, or really I am a guest with thee, and a sojourner, as all my fathers were. So David says, hear my prayer, O Lord. Give ear unto my cry. Why, we all say that, don't we? But we know that when we pray, God hears us. And when we make our requests known to him, he hears us. So he says, hold not thy peace at my tears, for I am your guest. The Christian is God's guest. It's a wonderful thing to belong to Jesus Christ. It's a wonderful thing to be a Christian, because it means you're his guest. You're his guest in this life, into his fellowship. John says our fellowship is with the Father and with the Son, Jesus Christ, and we are his guest in all eternity. For I am a guest with thee, and a sojourner, as all my fathers were. And he ends by saying this to God, O spare me, that I may recover strength before I go hence and be no more. So David is really asking, he was by the sound of that, possibly close to death, and as he was losing his health, and he says, spare me, allow me to recover before I leave this life forever and be no more, and our life will end. We'll not be back. Make sure that we live our time left on this earth for the Lord, for he is our hope. Now, Lord, what wait I for? My hope is in thee. Let's make sure we have our priorities right and put Christ first. Thank you.